Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome back to Synth Stuff. Today we're going to be talking about the Hydrasynth and bemoaning the fact that it doesn't have a sequencer. Or does it? Coming up! Alright, I'm still smiling, but just barely, because I just spent half an hour recording this video. And when I finished, I went over to the computer that records all the audio from the synthesizer and realized that I forgot to hit record. So here we are doing this video for the second time, and I'm hoping maybe it'll be better this time, who knows? Nope, the Hydrasynth does not have a sequencer, but just like in many other things with the Hydrasynth, it's so flexible that there are things inside it that can be repurposed to become a sequencer. There's actually a couple different ways of going about that, and as part of that, we're going to be talking also about sample and hold. Not really related to the sequencer, but I did get a question about sample and hold, so let's talk about that first. The question I got about sample and hold was basically saying, I don't know what it is, I'm afraid to use it. What does it do? Sample and hold comes back from a long time ago in the world of modular, where you could have individual modules that you could plug in from one thing into another, and you would have a sample and hold module. The sample and hold module would take an input signal. Now that signal could be, it's just a voltage, so it could be representing a pitch, it could be representing amplitude, it could be representing filter cutoff, it could be representing anything depending on where you plugged it in. The sample and hold module does exactly what it sounds like. It samples the voltage level coming in, and at the point where it's triggered, it samples that voltage level and then puts that voltage level out, even though the voltage level coming in may be continuing to change. So let's say we have a sine wave going in, it's going between 0 and 10 volts. And at one particular moment, we hit the sample and hold trigger, and at that moment, it has 7 volts showing at the input of the sample and hold module. That sample and hold module will put 7 volts out until the next trigger happens. And when the next trigger happens, it might be 3 volts, and so then it'll be putting out 3 volts. And it's typically generated by a clock. So as that trigger happens, each time it happens, it puts out a different sample of that waveform. Let's have a look at how we can simulate that on the Hydrasynth, and then have a talk about what sample and hold is in terms of modern synths. All right, here we are on the mighty Hydrasynth, and to begin with, we're going to hit init, initialize, and let's talk about LFOs and quantization. I know I was talking about just a moment ago about the sample and hold. Let's get a look at that in action. So to start that, let's first off change our oscillator to a square wave, and you'll find out why in a moment. And now we're going to open up LFO3, and you can see it defaults to a sine wave. And we're going to hit LFO3, and while we're holding it down, we're going to press oscillator 1, which is now going to link those two in our mod matrix, and it defaults to pitch, which is what we want. And what we're doing here is we're connecting LFO3 so it modulates the pitch of oscillator 1. And we're going to turn up the amount it modulates to, let's say, 64 or thereabouts. And now when I press a key, we should be hearing the LFO modulation affecting pitch, which is exactly what we hear. So that sine wave that you see there is modulating the pitch up and down. If we change the sine wave, there's a triangle, or up or down. Square waves, different duty cycles on the pulse. So we have all these different types of waves in here, but we also have the ability to quantize these. Now, quantization is basically exactly what sample and hold does. If we go down a menu, and we can see quantize is off. So watch what happens to the waveform as I turn the quantization on. You can see the waves start to get blocky. And here we have basically a sample and hold. So let's listen to what it sounds like when we do that. You can hear it stepping through those pitches. And that literally is exactly what a sample and hold does. It's sampling the voltage level of the LFO at different steps and holding it and then sampling the next one. what would happen if the signal coming into it was changing so rapidly that every time the sample and hold took a sample, it was basically completely different. So it's basically random. Well, we have that ability in the Hydrasynth in one of our waves if we go to sample and hold, right there. And that is basically what is happening here. It's just taking random numbers. It's not a true sample and hold because it's not sampling anything, but that's what most synthesizers today, most modern synthesizers, when you get sample and hold, it basically just means play random values at certain times, and that's what we get. And if we turn the speed up, we get a square wave playing random notes. And for some reason, in the 1960s and the 1970s, film and TV directors and sound designers decided this is what a computer sounds like. So that's our sample and hold sound, and that's typically what it's used for. If you want a random notes being played quickly, that's what you get. And you could do multiple notes. Sample and hold. So that's one way of getting kind of a sequence out of the Hydrasynth. Let's look at another way. Let's use the arpeggiator. So let's do another init. So we have a sound to start with. And if we look at on the arpeggiator, we have a bunch of different patterns that it will play. And I'm going to play let's play a triad, and I'll latch it on. There's up, down, up and down, and so on. We also have a random one. That's a good one as well. That's also good for our computer sound because it will, if we play a bunch of notes and hold them down, when that's turned on, it'll play all those notes in a random order. That's what Nick Rhodes did in Rio. If you ever listen to the background synthesizer playing, he's just playing a chord through a randomized arpeggiator. We also have order, which plays back in the order that we play the notes. So if I play some notes in here in a certain order, you can hear it playing back those notes in the order that I played them in. If I latch it on, then I can do that and let go. So now we're playing a sequence. The problem is as soon as we turn it off, that sequence is gone, and now we'd have to play another sequence. So there's no way of really saving that sequence, although it could be used, I suppose, in real time or in a performance. That's another way that we can get a sequence out of the arpeggiator. We also have phrase mode in the arpeggiator. Now if I hit Shift on to get into the arpeggio menu, we can see that in phrase mode we have, let's go down here to phrase, we have phrase 1. So if I'm going to just press some keys and we'll latch that on. And it's playing a sequence. It's a preset sequence. And you can see as I change the phrase number, that sequence changes. And there's 64 different phrases in there we can pick from. You can also change how long you want the phrase to be. The default is however many notes there are in the phrase, but we could just say we only want 9 notes in our phrase, or we want 3 notes. Different ways of doing that. So we have all these different phrases in here, and if I go back to default, and if I go to phrase 40, which I think you're going to recognize, and of course for this one we need some reverb turned on, and we're also going to need a little bit of delay. And now if I press this, you are definitely going to recognize this. And our length is too short. And it's too fast. I wonder if Ashen gets any copyright problems with including that phrase inside their firmware. Probably not. So that's the phrase system inside the Hydrasynth. I'm going to init again, and let's go back to our LFO again, because there's one more way of putting sequences into the Hydrasynth, and this is probably the most flexible. So once again, LFO 3, we're going to connect to oscillator 1, and we're going to put a pitch of, say, 64 or thereabouts. So now our LFO is once again controlling our pitch, and in the LFO itself, we have all these different waves, and we're going to go back here and we're going to switch it to step. Step means kind of like our sample and hold or our phrase, or it's playing individual levels over time. However, we can define what the steps are. If we go down one menu, we can see here we have step edit. And if we go in here, you can see here's all the different steps. We have 8 steps on this sequence. So I'm going to latch that on and we'll press a key. We're going to actually, let's go back here and just speed that up. All right, go back, step edit. And now we can edit what each of these notes are going to be in plus or minus off the root note that's being played. And if we play 2 notes at once, both of them are going through that sequence. And if we want to change how long the steps are, and right now, by default, it's 8 steps. We could make that 16 if we want. Now we edit the steps and we have 8 more steps to put in. Or we could go up to as much as 64 steps. Let's go back down to 8. And if we wanted to, if we don't like that steppiness, we can smooth them. Cool. But let's not stop there. We could also do the same thing on LFO4. So let's set up LFO4, and we're going to set it up as a step as well. And let's say 8 steps, and we're going to put in some random numbers there for this one. We haven't connected LFO4 to anything yet, so it's not going to do anything. Let's adjust our filter here. Okay, so now we're going to set up LFO4 and connect it to filter 1 on our mod matrix and adjust that. And LFO4, we need, you know what, let's set up LFO3 and 4 to use BPM sync so they're both synced together. And we'll set them both at 1/8. And that will make sure that they both switch at the same time. And LFO4, I think we need to smooth that. So now we have LFO3 modulating the pitch, LFO4 modulating the filter. Now we've done that with LFO3 and 4. We have 5 LFOs. We've also got envelopes, and these envelopes can also be set up to work as looping or one-shot, so these technically can operate as LFOs as well. So look at all these modulation sources. We can set them all up to do exactly what we saw here. Makes it incredibly flexible to create very dynamic and motion-filled sounds. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of the Hydrasynth. I love how easy it is to program and be really creative with it, and how easy it is just to connect anything to anything else. You saw what I was doing there. I thought, hey, what if we wanted to have the filters also step through? Easy to do, just assign that to the other LFO and then hook that one up. And we could just do the exact same thing if we wanted to adjust to it to modulate another voice parameter. Maybe we wanted to modulate through a wavetable, and you could do that, have it modulate up and down through a wavetable. Maybe we want to do delay and have it only delay effect on the last note in the sequence. You could do that too. All this stuff is just simple programming on the panel there, the Hydrasynth. And once you get used to the way the Hydrasynth is used and how you do sound design, it's super simple to do. I hope this is entertaining to you and inspires you to get out your Hydrasynth, start doing some more sound design on it, because it is really just a joy to program that synthesizer. If you don't have a Hydrasynth, what are you waiting for? Seriously, get yourself a Hydrasynth. It's not the greatest beginner synth because it is so deep, but you can definitely learn on it. If there are many people that buy this Hydrasynth with the intention of learning sound design, learning synthesis, and it's great because it will grow with you. You're never going to outgrow the Hydrasynth, but it's simple to use for a beginner as well, and it sounds great. And if all you want to do is play presets, it has lots of those too. I'll put links to all the different Hydrasynths in my description below. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. If you like this video, click like, subscribe. If you didn't like this video, click like, subscribe. Thanks for watching.